Hi, this is Hugh for Guitar.com, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to turn a neck that you don't like into a neck that feels great. The guitar I'm working on is a 1981 Tokai ES-100R, which in the early 80s was their version of an ES-335. But looking at the features, especially the long pick guard, I kind of feel that it's based on maybe like a 1958 ES-335, and it's got a neck profile to match. So it's really fat and clubby feeling, and the owner loves everything about this guitar except the neck. The plan here is to strip the lacquer off the back of the neck and recarve the profile to more closely approximate something that you'd expect to find on a very late 59, early 1960 ES-335 or Les Paul. I'm not going to take you through the whole process of stripping the neck because I'm sure you've seen people like myself do that countless times in the past. We're going to kind of parachute in about halfway through this project where I'm just at the point where I can start carving the neck. A few years ago, we covered Gibson's process for replicating a neck profile, specifically the Minnesota burst that was part of the Collector's Choice series. Gibson's got a very sophisticated method of doing this with a laser scanner that can generate CNC routing code. And of course, I haven't got a CNC router and I haven't got one of those fancy scanning machines either. What I do want to show you in this video is how you can use readily available tools that are very cheap to make really accurate templates of a neck that you do like, so you can use that to guide you when you're trying to replicate that profile on another guitar neck. For this particular guitar, I'm going to be using a set of templates that I made quite some time ago from really nice, very early 1960 Gibson Les Paul standard. It isn't here, so I can't show you how I did that, but what I'm going to do is use my ES-225 from 1956, which is actually a pretty close substitute to give you the general idea of how it's done, and then from there I'm going to show you the process that I use for recarving the neck. I thought I'd show you these. These are my radius gauges. Just bought them as a set on a well-known auction site, and I think they cost me less than £10. So they're incredibly useful for doing guitar setups, or as in this case, determining the radius of the fretboard. This particular fretboard has a 12-inch radius. So I'm going to take width measurements of the fretboard at the 1st fret, at the 7th fret, and also in this case at the 10th fret, because of the way the neck joins the body. The curve into the heel is already well underway by the time it reaches the 12th fret. Normally I would use the 12th fret rather than the 10th, but I think I'm going to use the 10th here just to be safe. So using this micrometer, which is actually set to millimeters, just going to take a measurement, 44.25 millimeters, and this time I'm getting 49.55, and up at the 10th I've got 51.03. Now I also want to take depth readings in exactly the same places, but the strings are on, so I'm a little bit obstructed, but there's a way around that. Hopefully the camera is focusing on this. It's actually just the nut off a switchcraft type switch, the type of thing used on most Gibsons for a pickup selector. And this part slips nicely in between the strings, and there's even a little ledge there so you can get on top of the fret to get a sense of how deep the neck is, right at the spot where the fret is. What I have to do is tip my calipers, close it up onto that. It's just over 5 mil, and I'm just going to re-zero it. And just get this tightened up down to here now. Be very careful with the back of the neck. The 10th fret, 25.2. Okay, it's template making time, and I've drawn lines going across and lines cutting through the center at right angle. This is going to be the width line, mark this 1st fret, 7th fret and 10th fret. This is going to be the depth line. So I'm going to start by marking out the width of the neck at each point. So I'm going to do that by using the centre line and setting the calipers to precisely half the measurement. So the width of the 1st fret was 44.25. If my maths is right, that's 22.125. So let's just get that set up. Just going to lock it off. You don't have to be super accurate. I mean, we're talking like 0.01 of a millimetre. So okay. That'll be accurate enough. The second one was 49.55, so 24.77. And at the 10th fret, we've got 51.03, so 25.51 will be fine. Okay, so I've got the width done, and now I'm going back to the 12-inch radius. And I'm just going to line that up and draw on a fretboard curve. So the depth of the 1st fret was 23.06. Now notice I'm measuring from the from the top of that radius curve that I marked, and that's the depth of the neck. Okay, next one will be 24.05. Okay, so for the next part, what I'm going to be doing is using this thing, which is a steel profile gauge. This one came from Axminster Tools. And it looks something like this. The way it works. Press it down onto a curve. So I'm going to show you how to use this on a guitar neck. As I'm sure you can see, I've got these lines of masking tape on the neck. So the next thing to do is to use the profile gauge, and you can see that I've marked this treble and bass. You know, you don't want to get these two mixed up because these necks are often asymmetrical. Just going to line this up over the line of masking tape and just press down. And there we go. Wonderful curve. It might seem crude, but this is actually pretty accurate. You do have to kind of use your imagination a little bit on the outer edges because it doesn't really track the steep curve very well, but for the vast majority of the profile, this is a very accurate way of reading it. So what I've got to do now is transfer this onto the template paper. Now what I have to do is align the profile gauge with the depth mark that I've already made and the width marks. Kind of line it up by eye so it looks square and draw around. It's a little bit bumpy. You can kind of press lightly doing this and then kind of fill it in later. Okay. As I hope you can see, I've got the very nice kind of smooth curve now after I've kind of filled in the bumpy line. And the next thing to do is cut this out. And for that I'm going to use a craft knife. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is separate this off. Next I'm going to cut across the initial line. And this is the bit where you have to be careful. So that's the first one done. I do two more just to complete the 225 templates. But as I said, I'm actually going to use some templates I made from a early 1960 Gibson Les Paul. Here you can see the neck templates have been drawn. I won't be using this one, as I said, on this particular guitar, but I may well end up using these templates on another guitar at some point in the future. I hope you can see this on the camera, but I've started by drawing a center line along the neck and marking fret positions 1, 7 and 12. The thing I'm going to address first is the depth, and the template that I'm working from a early 1960 Les Paul is actually deeper here than the Tokai, although this feels thicker and deeper, but there's about 0.5 mm difference at the 7th fret and the 12th fret. I wouldn't risk trying to take this down to a 1960 kind of profile, or rather a 1961-62 kind of profile, because I don't know how deep the truss rod is in the neck, and it risks exposing the truss rod. So basically I'm going to shoot for this early 1960 burst profile. The tools I'm going to be using are this relatively fine rasp, or it's more of a file really, and digital calipers to check my progress. I made a decision here. I was hoping I'd just be able to carve straight through this dreadful undercoat stuff, and it's really tough, and it doesn't shift with stripper either. So what I'm going to do is just basically scrape this off and just get back to the bare mahogany. It does come off relatively easily with a scraper. Adds a little bit of time to the job, but as long as you go very carefully, it's very easy to get it off without actually losing any wood. I'm back to bare wood, and I think this is a much better starting place now for trying to reprofile the neck. Depth is the issue I'm going to address first. I'm just going to bring that down a little bit all along this center line that I've marked, and using my first 7th and 12th frets as reference points. And from there I'm going to reintroduce the curve. These files are really good. They leave quite a smooth surface and take off wood fairly easily, but gives you plenty of control as well. Okay, I can feel a nice flat line all the way across the top of the curve of the neck here, so just going to basically remeasure and see how close we're getting. Okay, get in there. Right, that is pretty much there. Nice big flat spot all the way along the middle of the neck here. So what I'm going to do before I start curving is get a nice long flat sanding block and just make sure that this is just as level as possible. Just checking for gaps. Okay, looking pretty good. So I've achieved the thickness, but rather the depth that I want with this neck, and I've got a flat spot all the way along, which I've checked to ensure it's level using my set square, so it's very flat all the way along here now. I've got a kind of sharp ridge on each side of this flat spot. So the next job now is to just kind of work this ridge into the curve, and I'm going to put a line straight up the middle just to ensure that I don't actually change the depth by accident. Just using a kind of rolling motion at this point with the file. The file kind of hogs off the worst of it, and I can just change over to a scraper. Some people kind of draw a burr along the one edge, but I tend not to bother. Kind of work on the one side and then swap it over like that. This is largely done by feel at this point in time. By placing the templates onto the neck, I can see that it won't drop down properly, and the reason is that it's actually touching the neck just in this area here, and the same on the other side, which is pretty much exactly what I expected. That's what gives a neck a really bulky feel. It's not actually the depth, it's the shape of the shoulders that can make a neck feel like the proverbial baseball bat. You can actually make a neck with a lot of depth actually feel quite slight in your hands, depending on how you address this curve, and particularly the shoulders. So, having marked the problem areas, which is just about here, and the same on the other side, I'm going to just start working this curve to conform more accurately to the template that I'm working from. I'll also place this template in other parts of the neck, just put it across a little bit. It's not designed for this area, but if I move it this way to account for the narrowness, then I can actually identify other spots that are high, and it's a straight line all the way along here where I've just got to reduce the shoulder. Yeah, this is making a big difference already. A little bit more to go, but this will work. So I'm just marking the binding with my Sharpie. I left the finish on the binding. I don't want to inadvertently get Sharpie ink all over the binding, not be able to get it out. So I left the finish on there. What I'm going to do is basically try and cut into that binding a little bit to soften the shoulder, and I just want to see a line of black left on the very edge of the binding, and that's a good visual guide there to show me I've just knocked off the shoulder. This will be where the real magic happens, actually. And the neck starts to feel super comfortable. So I finished working on this side, and you can see I've just got a very faint line of black just on the edge of the binding there. The other thing I look for is if you look directly down square onto the back of the neck, I want to be able to see just a line of binding along the edge of the neck. Previously I couldn't see any at all, and now it's nice and visible, which means I've got a really soft shoulder around here. Just going to move to the other side of the neck now and finish that off, and then I'll just do a little bit more sanding to finesse the curve, but this is pretty much there. I'm really happy with the overall profile. After all the scraping and the filing, you get slight lines in it, and one way to get rid of that is to use this it's nicknamed like a shoe polishing method. So basically just get a strip of sandpaper, drape it over the guitar neck and do this, and quite remarkably the curve just really smooths out, and any flat spots just kind of disappear, and you'll be left with a really smooth feeling neck. Takes a while, but it's worth it. I'm really pleased with the way this has come out. It's pretty much conforms exactly with the templates that I made, and I think the neck's going to feel a lot more like a 59 than a 58, which is the intention all along. So once the owners come over, checked it out and hopefully signed it off, the plan is to then finish stripping off the neck and refinish in cherry all this mahogany section. So I'm going to take off the masking now, string it back up, and this part of the project is hopefully complete. Well, I'm glad to say that the owner of this guitar is much happier with the profile, and he's signed off on it. So I'm going to be stripping off the rest of that lacquer and maybe reshaping the neck heel a little bit to improve upper fret access, and respraying it in genuine nitrocellulose lacquer. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all again soon.